Amazing. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on a Wednesday night or Wednesday late afternoon if you're on the West Coast. We are 48 days out, which both feels like forever and not enough time until Election Day. We know states are already voting, absentee ballots are already going out. So basically, every day from now until November 3rd should be treated like Election Day. So I'm so grateful for all of you for being here tonight. And I'm really, really excited for tonight's training. We're going to hear again from our friends from the Organizing Empowerment Project. So you may be familiar with the work that they do from the documentary dress rehearsal, but they provide support to organizations to help them develop and implement relational organizing plans, which many people are saying that when we're not able to canvass in 2020 because of COVID, that relational is the thing to do to actually reach voters in important states and actually win this election. So this is very, very important. And I just want to invite everyone, if you're not on camera, to join us on camera. If you have your email open at the same time, if you're on Twitter at the same time, to put those things aside for the next hour and really treat this as the prep for Election Day that it is. And, you know, everything is on the line. So like this content and, you know, doing this type of organizing is so, so incredibly important. So I really just want to invite everyone to tune in and be fully present. I also want to shout out some of the partners that Organizing Empowerment works with, many of which you're familiar with, groups like AFL-CIO, the Sunrise Movement, Rock the Vote, Move On for Our Future, Block, who was featured in that documentary, NC Wins, which many of our North Carolina volunteers have been working with, Working Families Party, Black Voters Matter. I know we're all obsessed with Latasha and that team. So they are the ones really leading the education around relational organizing in this space right now. So we are very, very lucky to have our two trainers tonight, Amanda Brink and Christian Faust. So I will pass it over to them to walk us through the training tonight.
Thanks, Ashley. Really appreciate it. Appreciate everybody who joined us tonight on this sleepy Wednesday evening where we are 48 days out. Christian and I come from Wisconsin, where absentee ballots will be mailed starting tomorrow. So appreciate all of you who've adopted our home state. And if you've adopted another state, we'll forgive you. No, I'm just kidding. That's exciting as well. So want to have some group agreements for this training. Tech is sometimes faulty. Please be patient. Settle in, grab a beverage if you would like one. Find something to take notes with if that's of interest to you. Take a breath and be prepared to participate, like Ashley mentioned. And then assume everybody has best intentions and always want to make sure that we're being polite to others and kind to others. Okay, great. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So tonight's agenda, what is relational organizing? Talking about self-interest and story of self, talking a little bit about one-on-ones, the elevator of engagement, and then how we can support others in their relational organizing. So why we're here. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention, right? There's a lot going on in the world. Literally the western half of the United States is on fire. There's a lot to dig in about. This is why all of us are here, and this is why I'm here. But change happens kind of slowly, and although in this moment we needed to move very quickly, change happens in a direct reason, or in a direct path. So we have individuals who change, and then that actually moves over to interpersonal connections, and then that impacts institutional change, and then that makes actual societal change. But all of it actually starts with usually relational organizing. So can anybody using the chat tell me what relational organizing is? No? Okay, all right. Friend-to-friend outreach, Talking to friends and family, talking to people we know, friends, family, using your personal relationships to reach people. Exactly. Okay. All right. Or is organizing between your social groups, using relationships to mobilize our network. Yes, 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 yes. Really appreciate all the comments in the chat. So it's building power within your own community and sphere of influence. So starting with the folks that you interact with on a regular basis and building out from there. It often starts with one-on-one conversations, you talking to another human, and then it leads to multiple conversations with multiple folks, and then we actually can build out a network that gets even bigger until it starts to look like this, right? Okay, so how comfortable are folks with relational organizing? Can you give me like a 10 if you're super comfortable with it, a 1 if you're like, lady, I don't know what you're talking about? Okay, all right. Some people are super into it. Some people are like, maybe.
Lots of 5s to 6s.
Yeah, okay. That's great. All right, so one of the things that we want to chat about is why do we engage in relational organizing? So yes, COVID-19, this is one of the ways that we can be successful, but we also want to engage in relational organizing because it helps us live up to our values. So for those of you who are helping various organizations, like Ashley mentioned, NC Wins, there's this thing where we reach out to people using what we often call, organizations often call the voter file, right? These are lists of like registered voters. And because people move, because poverty impacts folks, because young people aren't already registered to vote, there's actually a huge section of the population that's actually left out of those voter rolls and those voter lists who are eligible to vote, who we can interact with. And so when we only talk to the people on the voter lists, we're actually leaving out like 23% of the population overall, and we're actually leaving out 40% of Black and brown voters. And that's just a lot of humans that we are leaving by the wayside that we need to engage. But relational organizing, because it works friend to friend and network to network, it actually goes beyond those lists to build the coalition that we need to be successful. So Christian, you want to talk about our first tool, self-interest and story of self?
Of course, it's like my favorite thing to talk about. So, next slide. So when we're talking about being effective when we're relationally organizing, it's important to be in touch with our own motivations for doing the work. So like, what is getting us in the room? Why are we here today, right? And a lot of that, like, is self-interest, right? You might ask yourself, why am I doing this work? What's in it for me? What am I getting out of it, right? There's like yourself, others, and culture and environment, right? And a lot of times in this work, one of the things that I hear people say a lot is like, oh, what you do is pretty selfless, right? Like, and I always kind of push back against that because like all of us that are organizing are probably doing it because it makes us feel better inside because we're helping the world get better. So even our self-interest, like, it's not a bad thing to have self-interest. And a lot of times I think that selfless thing is to like get away from the self-interest, but self-interest is important to understanding who we are and like why we're here. So self-interest, that is a weight, right? You have your honor, virtue, justice, like these values over here, but then you have your self-interest, right? Like, so your self-interest is shaped by forces that you come across in your life. So one set is like your family, where you grew up, where you live now, right? One of the ways I like to think about this is that you have like a set of forces that shape you that are kind of ongoing in your life, like your friendships have some control over those things. Maybe not totally, but like you have some control over them. And then there's other things like culture, religion, race, gender, and like specific events, values, etc., that are cultural things that are a part of like who we are. Am I lagging at all? Sorry, I just gotta. Great. So we want you to think about what your self-interests are. Like, why are you doing this work? What is it that brought you to this here today? What is it that is in your interest? Like, why are you here today? So if you want to just start thinking about that. Yeah. Climate. Ashley also asked, why did you adopt a state? That's also, did you adopt a state because you have like you care about that state for a different reason? I think last time on the call, there were people who said like they had family there. Voter rights.
So my parents live longer, healthcare. That's a really good example of a self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
Women's rights, if you are a woman, is helpful is a self-interest. Climate and education, those are definitely like issues that you care about, but like, are they necessarily what brought you to the table? Like climate in the fact of like, that is a self-interest. We want to be able to breathe. And for those of us living in the Western half of the United States, that's definitely a challenge right now.
But I always like to give the example of like with climate, when it comes to self-interest, like I care about environmental issues, all of that, but like, honestly, like it's not my, like if you were going to try and get me engaged, it's not environmentalism that's going to get me there, right? Like, so everyone has a different self-interest. Like it's not environmentalism that's your self-interest. Like that's kind of what you dig, right? Like, so like you gotta kind of find like what they dig and what their self-interest is when we're talking about other folks. So those self-interests, and as you're thinking about your self-interest, what you're going to recognize is that as you're thinking about your self-interest and thinking about those forces that shaped you, they're going to bring into your mind moments in your life where things happened, right? You're going to think about like, oh, well, that moment where that changed, right? Like my schooling affected this, right? Or I grew up in a rural community, right? I grew up on a small family farm. That impacted my entire life. It's part of the reason that I'm here on this training today is actually like growing up on a small family farm is why I got into rural organizing. I was actually relationally organized by my mother at 17, right? She made sure that I knew our family story about our family farm so that she could reinforce in me that it was important for us to vote and be engaged in a civic level, right? I could see that that was in my self-interest because I didn't want to go through this, the pain that I watched my parents go through. And that's part of what they were doing for me as well. So my parents kind of like presented me with a challenge. Like they made sure that I knew my story. She presented me with a story like, hey, we were on a small family farm. The government did not give us the support that we needed. We needed to work with representatives to support ourselves, right? To get the support that we needed. So there was a challenge, like they weren't finding the support that they needed. Their choice, like they decided that they needed to go and get support from a representative in the government because maybe that representative could get them heard over the bureaucracy, right? It ended up being that that representative did get them heard over the bureaucracy, right? And that's why my mother like shared that outcome with me of like, hey, your government can at once crush you, but it can also lift you up. So you have that choice, right? So she presented that to me. I accepted the challenge. The choice was whether I was going to engage with that. The outcome was the next day after she took me to that event, I was out door knocking with a local candidate and a US Senate candidate who was running for his first time. That US Senator was Russ Feingold. So like that is how I came into being. Like that's kind of an example of my story itself. Yeah, good job, Mom. That's for sure. She just recently found out that she's a part of my trainings and was really taken aback.
So Laura shared
So I
in the chat
invited her
box.
to.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say Laura shared in the
Oh,
chat box the theater that she helped fund and employs her is currently closed, and things must change if we're to survive. So that's like a good example of a quick, like, you know, quick two sentence like story of self.
yeah, like there you got your challenge and your choice, and now you know that you have to have an outcome, right? Like maybe you haven't quite gotten to the outcome yet, but like you're in it, like you're building a story of self right at this moment, Laura. So you're living it. And then connecting your self-interest and your story of self, right? What am I going to be calling on others to do? And how can I talk about my experiences in a way that'll connect with them? So when you're thinking about your self-interest, like every one of us, we don't have one story of self. That's one thing to remember. Like we have stories, like I give you that example of like my mother and the relational organizing, but like I could also give you like 20 other examples that I've kind of like built up in my head of points in my life where I made choices and that changed the direction and changed my life, right? So, and as you're listening to that other person, the more that you think about your self-interest, the more that you're going to realize the stories you kind of have in your back pocket, so that as you're talking to people, you'll realize like, oh, I bet if I share this story, that will connect with them, because I'm hearing that kind of self-interest. So I think this thing in my life would kind of fit this moment. So what values move me to take actions and inspire others to do the same. So like telling that story, right? Sharing the example of what's going to happen. Laura, like I'm pretty sure you would find a lot of people like connecting with those values over struggling over like closed places in this moment right now. I have a friend who just went to visit a place where I lived for a long time, and almost half of the small stores in the town are shuttered up, like not temporarily closed, but closed. So like those are things that you'll be able to connect with. They're experiences that shape your life. So anyone have a good story to share? Come on, be brave. It doesn't have to be a big like life-changing moment either. I've heard great stories of self where I read a book and it made me think about this thing, and now I'm here being an organizer 10 years later. So that book happened to be some Naomi Klein book, which I don't think is uncommon to read Naomi Klein and all of a sudden feel like you need to change the world.
Should we cold call someone? Is that mean?
I'd leave that up to you, Ashley.
Oh, Mallory's got one.
Oh, yeah, I'll go. I mean, there's like so many different things I could choose from, but a couple of years ago, like my whole life basically got upended because my husband left and we got divorced, and I moved from New York to Portland, Oregon to be closer to family because I have a young son who'll be 4 in October. And in order to do that, because I work in the entertainment industry and there weren't a lot of jobs here, I like had to start my own business. So like a huge concern to me is how we take care of working families and having options for things like universal childcare and universal pre-K, because obviously, you know, my ex doesn't even live in the same state. So it's like me all day long with my son. That's only been exacerbated by the fact that we're in the middle of this lovely pandemic. So I just see the need even more. But yeah, I mean, I think that's like one of my huge motivations is just that I feel like we don't take very good care of working families at all in this country. And there are a lot of single parents out there who are struggling, a lot of women who sort of bear the main workload on that front, that are really having, you know, no time for anything outside of work and their children because they just aren't supported. So to me, that is definitely something that is like a big part of my story of self and why I'm here volunteering now.
That was perfect.
So I think it was helpful that in your story of self, you talked, like, I could actually picture you with your son and like single parenting. And that's a really important, it's really important to give people visuals, because a good story often shows more than tells. And I can like picture you like moving across the country. And so that can be, that's a super good technique when you're like actually, when you're actually telling your story to connect to others. The other thing I think that you did a great job of is talking about how it connected to your values, and like being able to put food on the table without the help of a partner, and how that connects to just an intrinsic sort of self-interest of yours that a lot of other people would identify with and a lot of other people would share. Anybody else want to go? We could take one more if you're interested.
I could go.
Okay.
So I'm a retired mental health professional, and Donald Trump's personality made me very nervous from the beginning. And then I read a book called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. Some of you may have read it. That kind of furthered my thinking about who he is and how he operates. And then watching what his administration and the Republican Party have done over the last 4 years to systematically dismantle our institutions has made me really nervous for our future. So I do not, someone said I want no regrets on November 4th. That's how I feel. I want to look back and know, win or lose, that I participated in trying to get us really sort of right this ship that is our democracy.
That was super helpful. Thank you for sharing. I think Elizabeth, like I can actually picture, I don't know that I can, I've spent some time in therapy, so I can picture a therapist. And so that's a good visual for me. Maybe not everybody shares that visual, but that's a good visual for me. And so I think that can be particularly helpful. I also think that there's a lot of visualizations that folks can have with Trump that can be, you know, super kind of identifying and can help people make visualizations. Did I lose Christian?
He's still on.
Okay.
Gone dark.
He may have gone dark. It's okay. This is what we talked about when we talked about technical difficulties and how we would appreciate your patience with us. So we'll see if hopefully he comes back. If not, I will survive. Although I miss my buddy. Oh no, there you are, Christian. Okay, too funny. Okay. Okay, great. So appreciate y'all sharing your stories. So remember, the things that we're looking for are a challenge, a choice, and an outcome. And when you're giving feedback to others about their story of self, we want to connect on the values. We also want to connect on the details. So where there are parts of the story the parts of the story where the person's that has like especially good images or especially great like vivid imaginations of something that another person can actually connect with and identify with. So we'll get to why we have this slide in here in a little bit. So when you're helping people through coaching, through talking through their story of self, you do want to give compliments and build their confidence, but you also want to make sure that, you know, we're highlighting sort of the visualizations and we're highlighting the values. Our second tool of relational organizing that we want to talk about tonight is one-on-ones. So a one-on-one is basically a conversation that you're having with your friend or your family member. Relational organizing and organizing in general is about connecting. Connecting with another human is the thing that we can literally do that is the most persuasive, okay? This is our goal is to not just spam our friends. our goal is to actually have conversations with them and actually connect with them. So when we're having one-on-one conversations with our friends, with our colleagues, and with our family, we want to try to share information, identify a common self-interest or a self-interest that you can talk about with them, and then use that to form a foundation for a relationship and clarity in our movement, okay, for their role in our movement. So for some one-on-ones, we suggest that you be brave, you be super curious, and you be respectful and intentional. This can often be a challenge, right? Like everyone has the uncle or the aunt, or maybe it's not an uncle or an aunt, but the human that sits at the Thanksgiving that, you know, can be particularly challenging. And it's important to still try to connect with that person. So we want to be brave, we want to be curious, we want to be respectful and intentional. We also want to make sure that we're doing 80% of the listening and 20% of the talking. Okay? Because we're trying to connect with them and we need to actually listen to them and respond to the things that they are concerned about and let them talk that through. Christian, are you back?
I'm back.
Great.
The rural internet. It's a thing.
Awesome.
So I'm now on my cell phone. So our third tool is the elevator of engagement. And that is, above all, it's about meeting people where they are. So when you start working with your friends, when you're talking to your friends, the elevator of engagement, it's a series of conversations you're having with people. The elevator of engagement is what you're engaging them about. So as you move up the elevator, your engagement increases. So like on the ground floor, the volunteer is trained and takes the first action, right? So that would be, hey, you all reach out to 10 of your friends and talk to them about, find out if they're registered to vote, right? So that volunteer reaches out to 10 friends, finds out that they're registered to vote. Then follows up and makes sure that they have a plan to vote, right? So when they follow up, make sure they have a plan to vote, they follow through on a couple things. Once they regularly complete, like they're talking to their friends, it's really easy to say, hey, you know how we've been having these conversations? Like all you have to do is the way I've been kind of asking you a couple things about what you care about at the end of the conversation. You can do the same thing and like just talk to 5 of your, I would probably say 10 or 15 friends because I'm an organizer and I like to push. But, you know, then volunteers recruit other volunteers. And then once
Hey, Christian.
Talking to recruiting other volunteers. Yeah.
Can you, I think I'm going to take back over. You're a little hard to hear. Does that sound good for everybody? Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Okay, so elevator of engagement. The idea is that we used to talk about this as a ladder of engagement where you want to move people up the ladder. Some people get off at level 2 and they want to stay there. Some people only move up to level 1. People get to go where they want to go ultimately. So the ground floor, y'all are kind of on the ground floor probably, like you've come to this meeting. We're teaching you how to do stuff and hopefully you will leave this and take your first action, okay? And then hopefully you'll start to do calls to action, different tasks, different activities on a regular basis. And then hopefully y'all will start to recruit other volunteers, recruit your friends and family to help on the mission. And then hopefully y'all will get comfortable training volunteers, training your friends and family to be volunteers, right? Okay. So our mission, right, is to vote and save America, adopt a state. So this is why y'all are here. But ultimately people take action because they can, because they want to, and because they were asked. So Our recruitment best practices for you to work with other individuals to get them and build our army and build our mission is to build trust, because we're starting a relationship, meet people where they are, begin with easy asks. So, hey, are you registered to vote? That's a good easy ask. Be clear and organized, and then implement systems of mutual accountability. So, okay, who here has ever asked somebody to volunteer with them? Okay, some people. How'd it go? Okay, mostly good? Okay, have any of you ever done like cold calling for volunteers for an organization? That was harder, right? Yeah, okay. So you asking someone you know to get involved is 9 times easier than the folks who are cold calling, okay? So our ability to move from the one-on-one interaction to the big network of everybody getting involved, a lot of it depends on you asking your friends for help, okay? All right, just like frankly, you know, when you have a problem in your life, the first people you usually turn to are the humans that are in your phone, because they're more likely to help you than strangers, right? And that's not commentary on strangers, but, you know, they're more likely to help. That's what you turn to, okay? The same is true with volunteering. The same is true with voting.
Now, I don't know about you, Amanda, but I've asked friends to volunteer with me because I knew I would volunteer. I would show up because my friends were with me.
Because for a lot of people who are looking for a community, and they're looking for community, they're looking for something to do, for a lot of people, volunteering is a social activity, right? It's like something you kind of do for fun. And during COVID-19, we are definitely looking for things to do for fun. Great, okay. Our 4th tool. All right, like I said, we want to make sure that y'all are asking your friends and family to actually go out and volunteer. And then we're asking you to help them actually, like, you know, talk to their friends and family. Because again, that is how we do this. So the question is, those of you who said you actually like have asked someone to go volunteer with you, have any of you asked them to like talk to their friends and family? 1, Ronnie says yes. Mallory says, oh no, yeah, Mallory says yes. Ashley says yes. Oh, Elaine says ran a mini relational org thing. Okay, cool. All right, how'd it go? Good? Thumbs up? Maybe thumbs up? Okay, all right. Okay, so again, our goal is to turn this into this, right? All right. So a lot of times when you're trying to do this, you want to do introductions, right? So get everybody familiar with each other, a background on like why it is that, you know, you're actually like why you're doing this, right? So it's not just introducing people to each, if you're doing a training, it's introducing everybody to each other so they can get to know each other and build community. If you're just doing this in a one-on-one interaction, it's you kind of introducing the person that you already know to the organization that you're supporting or the candidate you're supporting. It's getting everybody on the same page. And then you want to go through a little bit of a background about why this is important and why it's important to you specifically. And then when you're trying to teach someone how to do something, you're going to give them some simple tips. You're going to sample it for them, and then you're going to help practice with them, okay? And be the first like to say that like we try to do practicing in these big 50 people, 100 people Zooms, and we do a little practicing by using the chat. We do a little practicing sometimes by doing breakouts. But if you're doing this in smaller groups, you can actually do little groups, and you can actually do quite a bit of practicing, and it really helps build volunteers' confidences so they can be successful moving forward after you leave them. So Does anybody know what a volunteer is most likely to get stuck on? You're like, hey, can you ask your friends and family if they're registered to vote? What's the part that people usually get stuck on? Starting, Rowan says. Committing, they're scared to do it. I think everybody's already registered because anxiety, actually asking, knowing what to say. Yes. Knowing what to say is usually the thing that they need the most help with, okay? So the thing that is most compelling to everyone is your story, is their own story of self. So why you support candidate X is the most important thing that you can say to persuade someone, and then helping them think through why they also support candidate X is the most compelling thing that they can say to their friends and family that to get them to participate as well. Crooked Media is awesome, MSNBC is awesome, but the most compelling thing that you can say isn't talking points that you got from someone else, it's something that's personal. Does everybody understand that? Okay. I know it seems really hard to believe because people make fancy commercials, but this is true. Okay. And it's been true for a little bit now, and it's particularly true in 2020 because there's so much disinformation that's out there. And think about it this way. We all carry mini computers in our pocket, right? There's no shortage of information out there, right? Like people can Google anything they want, okay? What they need is a messenger that actually has impact and actually can connect with them, okay? And that's what really makes a difference. Okay, so you want to encourage your friends to lean into their story. So tips for relational organizing conversations: start by talking to people like a human, like you normally would. This is not about following a script, it's about having an actual conversation, okay? Check in, catch up, etc. So bring up the call to action when it feels natural. So our call to action is generally about voting and saving America. You know, that means a lot of things. It means requesting absentee ballots early, right? If you're in a state that's possible. It means persuading people to go out and vote early. It means persuading people to return their absentee ballots on time or early. And it means persuading people to also talk to their friends and family. There's no universal rule for every conversation. You want to make sure you're meeting people where they are, and then make sure you do follow-up, okay? So for every volunteer, for every other human that you recruit who says that they will talk to their friends and family about this issue, you want to make sure that you're doing follow-up with them, and you want to make sure that you're giving them the support they need in order to be successful, okay? For you all, I would challenge you all to talk to 10 humans for this election, at least, okay? And when you are asking your friends and family to also participate, if they're kind of unsure about it, I would ask them to talk to 3 humans. If they're super gung-ho, I would ask them to talk to 10 humans, okay? That's what we see that people are willing to do, all right? Okay, cool. So, and again, just not to, reiterate, but we want to make sure that we're connecting and we're not just like contacting, okay? Christina says, if you already know the person you're talking to, you may have an idea of what's important to them. My parents are Republicans, but I've been able to talk to my mom about Biden's COVID plan, which is what really resonates with her more than any of the other ideas. Exactly. Okay, so let's recap before we can all go to our Wednesday nights. So we want to be talking to our friends and family about the importance of voting. We want to inspire them to take action by connecting with them. We want to ask them to not only vote, but also to talk to their friends and family about voting. And then we want to follow up with them basically like once a week from here on out to make sure that they're able to vote and they're able to talk to other people about voting. Okay, so that's like 6 more conversations with them. You can do it. I have faith. Okay. Who's got questions? I maybe have answers. I like that Ashley Lift thinks all of my jokes are funny.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So sometimes my Wi-Fi goes in and out, so let me know if you can't hear me clearly. So given that most of us are still social distancing and not regularly seeing people, what is the right way to even start like identifying the people to talk to? Like, and how much do you recommend doing this like on social media versus trying to, communication methods, I guess, because Facebook threads can go on and on, but what's really, is that really making any progress, or, what do you kind of recommend in this era?
Yeah, so I would encourage you to talk to your friends in the way in which you normally do. So that means I'm going to text my husband, I'm going to call my mother on the phone, I'm going to Facebook Messenger my aunt, and I'm going to WhatsApp my brother-in-law, because those are the communication methods that they're most comfortable with and they are going to respond to. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is when I say Facebook, I would use Messenger. So you're welcome to post things on social media, and posting things on social media is super helpful and a way to actually like get engagement and see who's interested in the election and who needs help. But I would pull that conversation into a one-on-one in either a text message or Messenger or whatever it is you usually use to communicate with that human, because fighting on Facebook is kind of fun, but really creates a toxic environment, and is super fun. So
Thank you.
Yeah, who else has got questions?
If people don't feel super comfortable unmuting, if you want to type question in the chat box, we can call on you so you know your turn is coming up. Or you can also unmute. While people are thinking of their questions, I have a question for you guys. Like, what are your thoughts on using relational organizing apps versus like just acting like a human being and talking to your friends? Like, do you think it's like a good place to add in more technology, or just like keep it simple?
So we literally make an app, and I'm telling you that you should mostly just talk to people. So,
and I second the talk.
And like the app that we make is great. It's super fun, but like this is about 80% organizing. And if you are using an app, it's about 20% technology. Like, it is helpful if you're working with an organization and they really like an app. Like it's helpful for you to, help them in the way in which they want to be helped. But ultimately, the app helps you grow faster, and the app helps you like expand a little bit, expand. But an app doesn't have a conversation with a human, right?
So this is Lisa again, but my feedback on that is having the ability to do organizing and have conversations asynchronously, I guess, like outside of working hours or on weekends would be valuable to me, because I've got young kids that are doing online school, and I have a job myself. So my time that I can do this work is either after hours, and depending on what state I'm supporting, the phone line's already closed, or on the weekends, which, I know that's the opportunities sometimes are less because there's so many more people able to support. So just having some option for being able to do after hours, like, even if there's a lag in conversation back and forth, would be valuable to me.
Yeah, and I think that I think that Facebook can sometimes be a little toxic. I do often sometimes think that Facebook groups can be a little more helpful, particularly if you look for Facebook groups that are kind of built around a self-interest that you share. A lot of times that can be a pretty healthy way for you to like navigate and do some like after hours organizing. if you, you know, are just kind of struggling with the time changes and stuff like that, and helping out in that way.
Can everyone hear me? Awesome. I'm back for the very end. Elaine asked in the chat, like, at this stage, would you suggest we prioritize persuasion, helping friends and family make a plan to vote, getting them to apply for a mail-in ballot, or something else? And this is kind of the same thing as what we've been talking about earlier, where you meet them where they're at. Like, get a sense of, like, where is this person at? Like, you probably already have a sense of, like, if they need to be persuaded or not, because you kind of probably have a sense of, like, how regular, like, are they progressive? Like, do they usually get engaged, right? So you have some sort of an idea of where to start with. So, unless, like, it's acquaintance that you're, like, reconnecting with, and then take a couple conversations to find out where they're at, so that you can figure out, like, oh, they need to be persuaded, or they need to be, you know, registered, whichever it is.
Other questions? Okay.
So everyone feels ready. You're going to talk to your friends. You're going to organize your friends. You're going to treat every day from now until November 3rd as election day, because it is. Yes. Yes.
And y'all, like, I'll be the first to say that, like, a lot of people are opting in to vote by mail this year, because they feel like that is the safest way for them to vote in COVID-19. And a lot of your friends and family need a lot of help with that. So we're supposed to use the talking point that voting is easy. Voting is easy, but voting by mail can be a little bit challenging, and we need to do some hand-holding to the people in our lives who we love to make sure that their vote is counted, okay? All right? Otherwise, we end up with, instead of photos of IDs sent in with your absentee ballot, you end up with selfies. Okay? Hashtag Wisconsin.
Cool. Last call for questions, and then we will let Amanda and Christian go back. I know their team has 3 other trainings going on right now at the same time, so they are incredibly busy.
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
See if I can phrase this right. I feel like a lot of the people in my life are voters, are really involved and know a lot, you know, and so I'm wondering about what assumptions not to make, you know, or to when to make assumptions, or where to prioritize, sort of a way that, you know what I mean? Like, I can think of the people I'd reach out to right away, and I feel like I might know their answer, but maybe I don't. So I'm just sort of thinking about the choices of who to reach out to and how to prioritize folks and what circles to go to.
My general rule of thumb, like, my advice for relational organizing, if you don't make, like, if you think it's an assumption, like, then ask the question. Like, if you're, don't even about your closest friends, right? If you think you're assuming something, ask the question. Like, and that also, like, I've found, like, that helped my relationships overall too, right? Because then I learned more directly, like, what was going on with them instead of me assuming.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So, like, if you have those assumptions about your friends, I would check with them. My husband lied for 30 years about voting, so.
Oh, okay.
I also would say that, like, your friends who you think are engaged, those are probably your best, like, volunteer converts.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Other questions?
I just would say with the last question as well, like, something that one of my friends brought up is, you know, I have tons of friends who are going to vote in the fall, but also are horrible or bad with deadlines. And so, like, getting stuff in well before their mail-in deadline, well before their like mail-in ballot request deadline, like you can still be helpful also in that regard too, like adding that extra nudge so that things happen sooner than later.
I mean, confession time. Who here has requested their absentee ballot? Okay. All right. Do you think your spouse did or your partner did? Right? Maybe.
I did it for them.
Eek. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amanda and Christian. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. A couple things I just want to tease. So definitely continue applying these skills. So some of what you heard tonight was stuff that you may have heard if you attended our trainings in June. Some of it was stuff you heard in the disinformation training that Amanda and team led a few weeks back. And the reason you keep hearing the same things is because organizing is actually really simple. It's connecting with people, having conversations, sharing stories, and then asking people to do stuff. So y'all are very, very well trained and ready to go. So you all need to be out there continuing to do what you're already doing. I said this in the chat, but you're already like first or second floor on the elevator of engagement. You're already doing more than everyone else. But our goal for our Adopt a State community for the next 48 days, and however long it takes to count every last vote, is that we have no regrets in November. So if you're already volunteering once a week, volunteer twice a week. If you're already talking to 3 friends about voting, talk to 10. So we want to help each of you like continue to up level and do more, because there are so many people who will not volunteer and who will never enter the ladder of engagement or the elevator of engagement. So we're really looking to all of you to continue to step up and do even more and push yourselves that little bit harder for these next 48 days. And some really fun things that are coming up. There will be a hard ass tournament going on. So if you remember the hard ass training from June, making those asks of people to get involved. So there will be a week-long tournament with a grand finale that will be quite a spectacular. There will be prizes. We're having Adopt a State trivia night. Lots more fun things with the rest of the Crooked team and our, the host and all the things. So lots of fun stuff to come. So I dropped the link in the chat, but feel free to invite your friends and family to join our community, invite them to Adopt a State, and we want as many people working alongside us for these next 48 days as possible. Yes, Shelly, a hard ass tournament. Get excited. So look out for that. And Amanda and Christian, thank you so much for being here. And I will see you all in our community. Have a good night.